Right, come on everyone, take your seats. Don't be late for class. We've got to take register before we get started. Jeb, stop eating paint in the back. Sam, get that paintbrush out of your nose. That is not a good way to use a paintbrush. You're supposed to use the bristle end on the models. Goodness me, you guys will never learn anything if we carry on like this way. Can we please settle down now? Are we sitting comfortably? Can we all pay attention now? Thank you all very much. Welcome class to the very first Middle-earth Strategy Battle Game University class. Today we'll be going over just a very basic overview of the Lord of the Rings Middle-earth Strategy Battle Game, just to give you a little bit of a taster as to what the actual game encompasses, and then later on down the line we'll be going into a lot more detail over the specific phases, the character profiles, rules, magic powers, X, Y and Z, and turning this into a little how to play course. So in the fullness of time you will have a whole broken down how do you play Lord of the Rings Strategy Battle Game course on the channel for you here. So what is Lord of the Rings? Well, the Lord of the Rings Middle-earth Strategy Battle Game, and that's getting a bit weird to say over and over again, is a turn-based tabletop game which pits legendary characters, heroes and armies against the vile hordes and villainous creatures of the Dark Lord in epic confrontations on the tabletop, fighting it out for the freedom of Middle-earth. The game is generally used using a standard six-sided dice and tape measures or measuring sticks if they are your preferred implements for measuring. And the game can be played on either a 4x4 or a 6x4 generally. These are the two standard sizes that you tend to see, although they do sometimes range smaller and bigger depending on the point sizes or if there's a narrative scenario in play. Now there are three specific ways you can play Lord of the Rings on the tabletop. The first being narrative play, and this is where you're playing very structured scenarios. They're very much focused around key points in the films, recreating those kind of scenes and playing out with a host of themey and specific rules to make sure the scenario feels accurate to how it was in the book or the film itself. There is open play, which is a fully flexible way of playing the game. Do you want to ally your Gondorians with the goblins of Moria? Go ahead. Do you want Gothmog leading a host of elves against an army of Balrogs and Arwen riding the back of them? That's probably a bit much, but you get my point. You can literally, this is the most fun and free way you can play Lord of the Rings on tabletop. You've got full range to do whatever you want. You can make house rules up and just basically have fun with your models. If you want to get your whole collection on the tabletop, go for it. I dare not do that because there's a few. Now the third and probably most common way of playing Lord of the Rings is matched play. And these are games which are played to a specific points value, and armies are made up using warbands, led by heroes, and follow a certain army composition to make an army which adheres to a certain points value predetermined by you and your opponent before you get playing. This is usually between the 500 and 1,000 point mark. Those are generally the kind of baseline games you're going to be playing. If you want to play more, feel free. If you want to play less, also feel free. But between 500 and 1,000 points is generally where you'll be playing these games. That allows you some flexibility to get a fairly decent army in and have a few heroes running around and generally just get all the Middle-earth goodness flooding through your veins. So each character and model in the Lord of the Rings Middle-earth Strategy Battle Game range has its own unique profile. Generally speaking, most character profiles will be a lot more in depth and have a lot more going on the front of them. There'll be special rules, there'll be special war gear, there'll be special things that are available to them and that they can do which normal rank and file warriors can't. Most of the normal rank and file warriors will have a profile that looks very similar to this and will be repeated at infinitum depending on how many of the specific warrior you want to put in. They'll have a lot more cut down options in regard to their war gear and their special rules, but you can obviously take a lot of them. Although an army of Aragorns does sound tempting. So what encompasses a standard turn in the world of Lord of the Rings on the tabletop? Well, a turn is generally broken down into 5 phases. First being the priority phase. This is where the two players roll off against each other to decide who will get first turn. Generally speaking, if a roll is tied, you will default to whoever didn't have it the previous turn. So effectively it switches from one to the other. Unless you're playing narrative scenarios, at which point the good player generally has priority on the very first turn of the game. There is then the movement phase, where players will take it in turns to move every single model in their army, placing them on and around the battlefield where they would like, adhering to their specific movement rules. Again, we'll be going through all this in a later episode in the university course. During the movement phase as well, you will have the opportunity to place your models in base-to-base contact with models in the opposing force, which will be geared up later on for the combat phase. And then once you've moved all your models, the opponent will get the chance to do the same. And then once both sides have moved all their models, you move on to the shooting phase, which is where the more keen-eyed and bow-wielding models in both forces will attempt to whittle down enemy characters and the enemy forces at range before we get to the combat phase, which is where any models which were in base combat with each other during the movement phase will fight it out to the death in brutal combat and attempt to remove each other from the tabletop. The player with priority will decide in which order all the combats are done, and once each combat has been fought and each model has backed away or slain its opponent during that particular phase, we get to the end phase, whereupon the all end of turn special rules are resolved. Any magical powers that resolve at the end of a turn are then resolved. You will then look at how many points you've scored, how you're getting on in regard to objectives, and then reset, ready for the next priority phase and the next ensuing turn. And then it's rinse and repeat, following the same procedure every turn until either the enemy forces are dead, your forces are dead, or until you've run out of caffeine and want to go have a little nap. There is a lot more to come in the semester of Middle-earth University. We will be touching on all the phases in detail, encompassed in a turn. We will also be touching on an in-depth character profile, how to use Might, Will and Fate, how to use and determine line of sight, different types of war gear, different types of special rules, different magical powers, going through all the scenarios in the book and explaining how they work and how you can use different tips and tricks to give yourself an advantage on the tabletop. Explaining in detail how to use heroic actions, siege rules and the allies matrix, and then going through how to build an effective army based on whichever faction you've chosen to try and conquer or free Middle-earth. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed our very first lesson in the Middle-earth strategy battle game University. This was, again, a very basic overview of a turn. This is merely the induction to the course. There'll be a lot more videos coming with this later on down the line, and we're testing out a new setup with the green screen. I mean, my classroom, definitely not a green screen. This is definitely not a green screen. Yeah, so we wanted to make sure we got this series up and running and going as soon as we could. Please give me all the feedback you possibly can. Anything you'd like me to cover later on down the line, anything you think I've missed, anything you think would be a good addition to this course. There'll be loads of examples and loads of wonderful visuals to accompany all the things we're explaining later on down the line on the course. But until then, I really hope you guys enjoyed our little induction to the new series that's hitting on the channel. Please like, subscribe, drop a comment, let me know what you thought. And until next time, guys, take care, and as always, happy hobbying. Class dismissed.